When you are in a cartoon community, you are bound to see a bunch of theories ranging from very legit to very crazy and ridiculous. Obviously, Amphibia and its fandom is no exception to that, and I've covered some of these theories in the previous video, so feel free to check that out. But despite that being one of my longest videos I've made so far, there are still quite a lot more old forgotten theories from the Amphibia community, so let's go right in and take a look at them. Like the last video, I asked what theories you guys remember on Twitter and YouTube, and the most popular theory that people seem to remember was that Hop Pop was going to die by the end of the series. To be honest, I should have brought this theory up previously, but better late than never, I suppose. Anyway, there are minor variations of how Hop Pop's death would play out, but most people, including me, believe that Hop Pop would sacrifice himself to save Sprig, Polly, and Anne at some point, most likely in the series finale. Although, a few people did believe he may actually have a pseudo-death in True Colors, which we were only half right about. A few pseudo-deaths did happen, but with other characters. As rather dark this theory was, like the other dark theories I previously covered, there's actually some merit to it. Like with Anne losing an arm and Sasha losing an eye, there were a lot of references to Hop Pop dying, ranging from dark jokes to rather revealing character moments.
And no, I'll do it. The whole point of this is to get you home alive. I've already had a good life.
However, unlike those other theories, Hop Pop's death seemed more possible because a sacrifice from him could have been a logical way to end his character arc. For much of the show, he has been very restrictive in what he allows his kids to do, but he grows to let them be more independent. More significantly, Hop Pop was mired with guilt throughout the show for failing to protect Sprig and Polly's parents, and swore to protect them at all costs. I imagine that Hop Pop's guilt was further exacerbated during True Colors when Andrews attempted to kill Polly, Sprig, and Anne. Some others also believe that if Hop Pop did bite the dust, Sprig and Polly would then be taken care of by either the Boon Choice or the other adults in Amphibia. Although that is a separate theory of its own, but we'll get to that later on. Despite all the evidence that suggested that Hop Pop would bite the dust by the end of the show, we obviously did not get that. He was able to live through all the dangerous moments we have seen in Amphibia, which is kind of funny to think about, to be honest. Normally, with many Disney stories, they usually involve the parental figure of the protagonist getting killed off or making a long-lasting sacrifice. But with Amphibia, instead of Hop Pop, it was his kids that found themselves in near-death situations the most. And one of his grandkids did actually die. That's quite a role reversal when you think about it. Anyway, I'm glad that this theory did not come true. Seeing Hop Pop live a relatively peaceful life after all the craziness we saw is the most wholesome ending for his character arc. And it was well deserved after he and his grandkids redeemed themselves from their tragic losses. Moving on from Hop Pop, let's talk about yet another theory related to Sprig, specifically his family heritage. During the time when Season 2 aired, some fans theorized that Sprig's mom was still alive, even though we have never seen her. This idea was created when we found out how Sprig never really knew his mother before she passed away due to being too young at the time.
You know, I've always wondered, can you miss someone you never actually knew? That's silly. I mean, of course you can't.
Emotional scene aside, people still refuse to believe that Sprig's parents are dead, which I don't know why that's the case. I mean, this is Disney we are talking about. But despite the show repeatedly reaffirming that Sprig's parents are gone, some people still thought at least his mom was still alive. Why his mom in particular? Well, there's actually two rather different variations of this theory. The first theory suggests that Sprig's mom was actually General Yunnan.
Scourge of the Sand Wars, defeater of Ragnar the Wretched, and the youngest Newt to ever achieve the rank of general in the great Newtopian army!
Yeah, this idea is just flat out ridiculous no matter how much you rationalize it, even at the time. Frankly, the main argument that people had in support of this theory is that Sprig and Yunnan had similar skin color, and Sprig's design has hints of him being part Newt. Other than that, this theory was just flat out nonsense, and I never really believed it. For one, frogs and newts can't crossbreed. That's just basic biology there. They may be amphibians, but they're two very different species outright. Also, doing similar design features, like skin color, is such a shallow way of doing character theories. By this logic, none of the planters then are related to each other, which we know is not true. So yeah, Yunnan being Sprig's mom is somewhat of a cool idea, but it's just utter nonsense. However, There is a second theory where people believe that Sprig's mom was actually the mysterious pink frog from Andreas' past, who we later find out was called Leaf. Now this theory does sound far-fetched like the other ones I mentioned, but unlike with Yunnan, there's some more logical sense and plausible speculation that could have made this theory work. First off, Leaf does look and act a lot like Sprig, and it is confirmed that she is a planter ancestor. In fact, she was the very first planter. That does explain a lot why Andreas chose to drop Sprig out of the window. Not only does it hurt Anne, but it's also a way for him to get revenge on Leaf without actually her being there. Of course, the main problem for making this theory work is that Leaf was supposed to be around 1,000 years ago, when Andreas was still very young. As we know, amphibians in the show have a lifespan similar to humans. However, it was also confirmed that other characters in the show could live beyond that typical lifespan, and Andreas and Mother Olm are the characters to prove that. So people believed that Leaf could have lived as long as Andreas too, whether it be through magic or technology. With this in mind, it was believed that in the years before the main events of the show, Leaf would return to Amphibia and form a new family, and that's how Sprig and Polly are born. Some variations of the theory also have it where after the heroin attack in Woodwood, Sprig's mom or Leaf would have secretly survived and go back to Earth to further protect the Calamity Box, until Anne steals it and kickstarts the events of the show. This idea of an extended lifespan for Leaf could have also explained how and why the Calamity Box remained hidden on Earth for 1,000 years with no one being able to mess with it. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I found it awfully convenient that no humans on Earth prior to Anne, Sasha, and Marcy tried to use the box and got themselves transported to Amphibia sooner. So as fascinating this theory was, we obviously did not get that. We were right that Leaf was related to Sprig and Polly, and she did return to Amphibia shortly after taking the Calamity Box to Earth, but we were just dead wrong on the timing. Leaf may not have been Sprig's mother, but she was his 40 great-grandmother. And I did not pull that number out of my ass, by the way. On average, that's how many generations there are within 1,000 years. So, fun fact for you all there. The theory may have been cool, but I'm actually glad this didn't become canon. Sprig and Marcy were already great representations of Leaf as a character, and her actually being alive in the modern day would have definitely screwed up certain character relations among the planters. That family shrub would have been a lot more complicated if that were the case. Moving on from the planters, let's talk about a theory for, honestly, one of the more underrated characters in the show. For a major character, I surprisingly don't really talk about Grime that much, so it's time to change that, and fortunately, this theory about him is actually the most interesting one I remember for this video. So sometime in late season 2, or early season 3, some people theorized that Grime had actually been killed long before the main events of the series. However, he was then brought back to life via necromancy, kind of like what we see in Maddie and Marcy. Dang, I'm just realizing we're covering yet another necromancy theory for a video like this. However, unlike the other theories previously mentioned, there's actually some really strong evidence to suggest this. For one, Grime's design does make him look like he was previously slain in a battle. The scar on his right eye is a big indicator, of course, but the even bigger indicator is actually his left eye, which was still working. Compared to his sister Beatrix, they have rather similar designs, except for their eyes. Not only are their scars inverted, but more importantly, Beatrix still has a seemingly normal eye, while Grime's good eye looks like it's glowing. The only other creature we see that had eyes like Grime's was Leafy, who was of course resurrected. Now, appearance is one thing, but this theory makes a lot of sense from a narrative standpoint. We know from General Yunnan that Grime used to fight as a gladiator in Utopia, and he was one of the best fighters. So good that he was appointed as captain of the South Tower.
Wait, you're Grime? The fiercest fighter of the Colosseum?
Yep, that's me.
During that time, Grime could have been killed there and revived. This revival theory would also explain why Grime repeatedly claims to not be afraid of death.
I'm not afraid of death. What a great way to go!
If he dies, he probably knows he could be brought back.
Woo!
And that's assuming if that's even needed, because one of the perks of the resurrection spell, at least the one that Maddie and Marcy used, is indestructibility. So with that knowledge, why would Grime be afraid of death? Now sure, like all the other theories mentioned, there are some holes in it. For example, the resurrection spell that we see only works on small, non-talking animals. Although, that doesn't really mean that reviving a complex organism is impossible, since it could also be likely that higher tiers of the resurrection spell exist. I guess a stronger argument against this theory is that it degrades Grime's moment of wanting to put his life on the line, particularly in the scene where he loses his arm to Darcy. Although, that's not really as strong of a point because it's not a guarantee that Grime would have been revived if he were to bite the dust. Grime could have died and stayed dead if no one can or is not willing to save him, and I'm sure he would have known that for every decision he makes. Since there is decent evidence in favor of this theory, with not much of a strong argument against it, this is actually one of the few Amphibia theories that is forgotten but not actually disproven. It could very well be possible that in a future continuation or spin-off, we would learn about Grime's past and get confirmation on this theory. So only time will tell whether this theory will be disproven and discarded to be forgotten, or be proven and we get to see a bunch of fan art on this idea. So that's all the theories that I personally remember seeing. However, before I go, there are a few interesting theories that you guys brought up that are worth giving a reaction. Spyro2002 wrote, "This is one that was pretty popular in an old Discord I used to be in. It was, I think, either during or shortly after Season 1 was airing, but specifically post Bizarre Bazaar. The theory was that Marcy teleported near Valeriana's house or something, and that she took her in, and they lived together basically, and that's how she recognized Anne for being a human because she had her own point of reference. As for the Calamity Box tablet thingy she was selling, I think we just thought it happened to be something she got her hands on that Marcy recognized due to the similarities to the box, and that she was displaying it to try to get the attention of anyone who might know more." So yeah, that theory definitely sounds interesting. Obviously, we didn't actually get that, but the idea of Marcy meeting Valeriana before Anne sounds like something we could have seen in an AU because the events of the show would definitely change quite a bit if that were the case. On Twitter, Kyle wrote, "Fans accusing Marcy's parents as being abusive and uncaring and that they moved without Marcy." So I can understand that sentiment actually. I mean, the scene where Marcy ran away from home did imply that her parents, particularly her dad, were rather cold and unempathetic. But at the same time, jumping straight to accusing that they're abusive rather shows just how much people don't know what abusive parenting is. Sure, parents can be strict, but clearly they're just doing things that they see as beneficial for their kids, even if the choice seems counterintuitive at first. But yeah, thank goodness that this theory was disproven by the creators and by Marcy's journal itself, which shows that Marcy's parents do actually care about her. Finn the Frog wrote, "A little theory I had was that Andres' old friends were also forced to assimilate into the core like Marcy. Didn't think too much about it, but that was in the back of my mind." So for a while actually, I thought this was a possibility too, but then I remembered that in the episode Beryl's Warhammer, it was confirmed that Beryl was slain in battle. Then of course, Leaf obviously could not have been assimilated into the core, considering that she portrayed Andres and Utopia as a whole. It's an interesting thought, but yeah, it would not have made sense at all. Dr. C. Jack wrote, "I don't remember if you mentioned this in your first video, but I think I remember a theory where there would be a Calamity Darcy versus Calamity Sasha versus Calamity Anne fight. I personally don't remember seeing that theory circulating, but that definitely would have been a cool idea. While the two fights in All In were amazing to watch, a three-way fight between anime-powered girls would have been epic. Again, that would make a great idea for an AU. Alright, last one for the video. Jeffrey Quinn wrote, "Wally is Ivy's dad." Okay, I'm actually very aware about this theory because of one of my mutuals on Twitter. Shout out to Stan Drew for keeping this theory alive in my head, but the general idea is that in the years where Ivy's mom, Felicia, was traveling throughout Amphibia, she encountered Wally when she was in Ribbitvale. The two fell in love, and together, they got Ivy. Therefore, Wally is Ivy's father. Now admittedly, there's not really any strong evidence to support this theory. The main bit of evidence that exists is when Felicia and Ivy were talking to each other, and Felicia mentions Ivy's father, and in the next few seconds, the camera angle focuses on Wally. As small of a detail that is though, that is done with intention in mind, which definitely makes this theory at least possible. On the bright side, for the three Wallicia shippers watching, there's not really strong evidence to suggest that it's disproved. Sure, Wally and Felicia barely have any interactions at all in the show, but that could easily be explained away for the fact that Wally is trying to hide his double life as a bum in Wartwood and as a rich guy from Ribbitvale. Also, in the 1 or 2 interactions that Wally and Felicia had, they were on pretty good terms. But if you're still not convinced, consider this. Out of all the frogs in Wardwood to show up on Ivy and the Run, why was Wally one of them? It could have been any other frog. I mean, even Hop Hop did not show up at all in this episode. But no, besides the planter kids, we saw Ivy, Felicia, and Wally. Okay, clearly I actually had a lot more to say about this theory than I thought. My point is that this theory of Wally being Ivy's father is a very fun theory that I hope gets proven one day. I doubt it will anytime soon, but considering it was never disproven by the creators, who's to say that it will never become canon? Again, like the Grime resurrection theory, only time will tell. As you have seen, there were quite a lot of interesting Amphibia theories that circulated through the community during and even after the show's run. Despite going through quite a handful of them, there's surprisingly some more theories from this show that are absolutely bonkers, to be honest. Let me know if you guys want me to make another video like this one on Amphibia or other shows in the comments below, and please give this video a like and subscribe for more content like this. Also, thanks again to Zeb13 and MB Command Nerd for supporting this channel directly through Patreon, and thank you all for watching this video. I hope you all have a great day. See you in the next one!